Welcome everybody to the online seminar series, Machine Learning Needs Mathematical Optimization. We are delighted to have today Dr. Dewan, who was the Vice President, Chief Data and Analytics Officer for Otis Elevator Company. She was responsible for driving the analytics, data science, data architecture, and management strategy and roadmap. And prior to this, she held various positions at BNSF Railway, and with an increasing scope and responsibility, being the chief data scientist in her final role. She is also an author of several research publications in various scientific journals, and she serves on several advisory boards. She has also been a member of Informs from since 1993, and over the years she has led several initiatives that touch upon many activities conducted by Inform, such as chair of the Edelman Award, chair of the Edelman Gala, president practice section, president railway application section, chair of innovation applications in analytics competition, committee chair of practice academia programs, and where she has been an instrumental in sponsoring activities that help bridge the gap between academia and practice. She also served as an executive sponsor for the Women in Technology Energy Resource Group at Otis and helped establish a global community with focus on enhancing women representation in STEM fields. So we are very pleased of having you today, our online seminar series. So for the audience, please know that Pooja is happy to take questions on the go if they are very urgent, so put them in the chat, and if not, we will have time for questions at the end. So the floor is yours.
So good morning, good afternoon. It's a pleasure coming and speaking with you. And Dolores, thank you for inviting me to come speak with the team out here. So as Dolores mentioned, that I love to keep it interactive, and she's going to be helping me out. So if there are any questions during the conversation that you would like me to address, please feel free and post it in the chat, and Dolores can just weave those in as it is. So today I'm going to be talking about what is the role of analytics professionals in building a data-driven organization. Notice I am being not provocative over here. I'm not talking about the role of optimization, the role of machine learning, the role of data science, the role of AI, because for folks that have and understand that artificial intelligence and how optimization fits into machine learning, really honestly, it's all of the above that are needed to create a data-driven organization. Now, just like a data scientist, my background is also in data science and AI. So I'm going to be like a data scientist, be segmenting my customers when I talk with Dolores. One of the things is most of our customers, which is you in the panel, in the audience out there, are in early career or mid-career professionals, still students hoping to get into practitioner role, some academics that are thinking about how are what are the needs of the practitioners and how do they adjust what they teach to the audience right here. So we continue to have the most relevant education as well as development to support AI. So I think all of us know it, but it doesn't hurt to always start with the value, why it is. So just as FYI out there, if there are some questions, some of you are thinking about getting into startups where you would be focusing on a little bit different flavor of roles that we might not be able to address in the conversation today. If you don't feel comfortable asking it during the conversation, just connect with me. I'm on LinkedIn, and we can certainly talk about it later on. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to start with the value proposition out there itself. How do we make an impact itself? So, if you do Google search right here, or go to ChatGPT, or read articles written by HBR, McKinsey, PwC, likes of all the big consulting companies, some of the things that they are talking about for the companies itself, that there is a price of more than $16 trillion in our economy over the next 6 years till 2030 in terms of making a difference in the organizations. So here is something that HBR had done to look at 150 companies, and they tracked their compounded annual growth, and they kind of thought about, okay, what are the companies that are doing the digital transformation well? Are you going to ask me the question that we are here to talk about analytics and not just digital transformation? So just hold on for a moment. But the point I'm trying to make over here is you can see in compounded annual growth, there is a huge impact that our analytics can have on organizations out there itself. So that 16 trillion I talked about is kind of showing here in the compounded annual growth. And then on the right side, if you go, it talks about what does digital transformation require for companies to happen. So we have talked a lot about digitization in the world out there. We've heard about ERP systems, CRM systems to manage our customers. But truly, a digital transformation does not just require the digitization technology, but the analytics portion, along with operationalizing it to drive actions and drive results. So, for likes of us that have been in analytics and have been doing AI for a long time, you can see we are front, right, and center in what is the growth market and the market to make a difference in the world out there. So I'm going to take and focus on this conversation itself, just another view itself, to kind of show you, it's not just one. What's been found is truly companies that are even mentioning DNA, and that's the box on the left side in their analyst calls. And if you think about their financial performance, the companies that mention DNA or data and analytics and relate their performance, they are 39% time more likely to have much better financial performance compared to the companies that are not thinking about data and analytics. Another way to look at it is to say, okay, the companies that are not really thinking about data analytics, the top, the lowest box out here that my cursor is showing, is 50% of them are truly having the lowest financial performance compared to their peers in the market out there. So there's a huge differentiator that we can create for companies we join, whether it is big companies, voluntary organizations focused on improving, or, for profit startups or big companies itself. So the value of machine learning, data science, and AI is being compared to the value that we can bring, using IoT, cloud. So huge impact. So I think this is something we all are very happy about because we love what we do, and there's a huge potential for it. So how do we make sure the organizations we join are really set up to become data driven? So I'm going to talk a little bit on the left side for all the things that are required to make it happen. So Dolores talked about how I, was responsible for setting up a complete data organization within my past two roles at BNSF and Otis. Well, to make analytics happen, there's a lot more competencies required than just data science and analytics. So if you look at this, you can see that in the office of the chief data officer, you are not just focusing on analytics. I had teams that were focusing on data management. How do you store data? How do you focus on its quality? How do you manage data in the cloud at the minimum cost itself? Because data science compute is huge. How do you enable our data scientists to be able to build models but not break the bank of the companies we are working with? So there's a lot of teams that are required that you need to set up. So on the right side is another look to think about, which I really love. And I think for those of you that are in early career, the reason I want you to be aware about it is that you have a role to play itself. So for the data-driven organization itself, the left side of this orange capabilities and deficits is all about the why the organization needs to be building that data and analytics. And so it has to tie to the business, because an elevator company is not going to become a Google, but they have needs and their strategic objectives that require you to build a data ecosystem to make them become the best elevator company in the world. The same way, a railroad company is not going to now become a trucking company, but it does need a data organization to help them manage their crews, manage their locomotives, and be able to do the analytics to make the best decisions using them. So left side is all about the drivers and the stakeholder or the business outcomes that you are trying to do. And this is an extremely important component in not just setting up organizations, it's also a very important component in each of the individual projects you are going to be working on. And I'm going to talk through with a couple of examples out there to help you out there itself. The right side is all about the ecosystem. If you're generating a terabyte of data and you have no way of accessing that information as a data scientist and be able to build models and have access to scalable architecture to not just build that model and deploy that model, then even the best of the models are going to take a huge amount of time to build, because you're going to talk about latency in collecting information, the time it takes for you to build the models, and the time it takes for you to deploy the models. Now, guess what? In today's world, where the customers and our understanding of what customers want keeps evolving, if you don't have an understanding of how our insights are going to be used, and there are not capabilities to support it, even in early career itself, you need to be thinking about, okay, are you really having accelerators that the organization is providing to you to help out and build those models and deploy those models? And if not, how do you do it nimbly? You do not need to spend millions of dollars to make this happen. I've made this happen in organizations that I've consulted, and I've led teams where you just repurpose and reorganize your team to support this structure in a way that you are focused on the value, and instead of having your limited resources spread out over multiple initiatives, rather focus and be successful on some and help those organizations realize the value so you can scale to the other areas. Now, that's not new to us. I mean, if you come from an optimization background or data science background, the science of doing better is something that's very, it's ingrained in our DNA itself. So how do we enable this mindset in every project we get into is something that I'm going to be giving you an idea of. Okay. So you're going to say, okay, well, I'm going to join a company and they're going to have their own priorities. And, I've given you some of the examples over here, whether they want to improve their profitability, they want to improve their sustainability, they want to focus on the customer, they want to grow. 50% by year. Well, how does that map into my project or my role if I am the one in the startup and the sole data scientist kind of thinking through all the quadrants that I talked about in the past slide? So your goal, whether it is at a macro level for the entire company or whether it is for your own project, is not to create a data and analytics solution. Your goal is to create a business strategy or a business solution that is infused with data and analytics. And this is an extremely important fact that you need to go through. So think about it. While our models have our objectives on how they are successful, if we cannot visualize what it needs to become for the business, then you have a hard time selling your ideas or sometimes building models that are just not the right models itself. So I'm going to take an example, which is extremely simple, looking at a large equipment manufacturer itself. You know, you are looking at how do you make them become more profitable in their service contracts. Well, in order for them to become more profitable in the service contracts, you will say, okay, I'm going to start predicting when the failures are going to happen. Because I'll predict the labor costs are going to be low. And then because I'm going to create that kind of visibility, the mechanic productivity is going to improve and there'll be non-financial value of the brand itself. And guess what? There's going to be a return to the organization because they're going to have, cost of failures reduced. Their contracts are going to be more profitable. Their downtime is going to be less and they're going to be a better reputation itself. I'm going to ask you to hang on to your horses over here. Now, let's go to the blue box that talks about the value enablers itself. So remember that circle I showed of all the things that you need to think about? Well, guess what? If the data is not even available on the equipment for you to be able to, with quality, understand when did the mechanic go? What were the kind of failures? How long did you take to fix the failure? Were they repeat failures? Then even if you are trying to build a model, your data is not going to be helping you predict very well. Now, data is never going to be perfect, but your ability to understand the quality itself and how you help the organization get to focus on not just building a model, but also scaling the quality to help you improve it, at least gives you an idea when you're building a model, how good it is and where can you use. I'm going to give you an example over here. So one of the companies that I consulted with was focused on building failure models to get more service contract profitability. And their belief was that the data scientists have been working for, over a year on this model and their prediction accuracy doesn't seem to improve. So there's something wrong with the team itself or the skill sets itself. So as I was trying to understand with the company, what is it that was happening over here? So my first question was the why and step back. I said, okay, let's assume you think this team is not doing a great job. I'm going to focus on that later, but let's think about if they are successful, what are you going to do with those models? And is it going to scale to all your solutions? Well, guess what? The company had not thought about, okay, if these predictive models are successful, can these models then scale to all the service contracts that company manage? And they realized no, because they were asking their teams to work on a segment of models on a segment of their customers that even if that team was successful, it would not even have covered 15% of their portfolio. So I said, okay, so let's think about it. Even if this team is successful, this is not going to scale to help you solve the problem for your entire portfolio if your plan was to sell it for your entire portfolio. But then let's also step back and say, okay, is your goal just to be able to sell these insights, or is your goal to influence some of your mechanics so that you do get the mechanic productivity you're hoping for? And they said, well, we want both. So I said, okay, do you really have even the visibility that the mechanics can get once these models are successful? And so again, the answer was no. They had, global presence. There were different flavors of service systems going in different companies under them and countries. So I said, okay. So it seems like it's not just that we are trying to create predictive models here, which it seems like you made the project to be, but create an end-to-end solution so that your mechanics do get the visibility irrespective of the unit they are serving or the country they are, in terms of how to fix and leverage that insights. So in order for the organization to realize that value, you needed to not just think about the data science portion, but the entire end-to-end ecosystem of trying to say, okay, why am I working on this project? If I am successful, what is it that's going to change and that'll help me make sure I am successful in this project? No matter whether you are thinking about starting a startup based on AI, you are a big executive looking at, providing that digital transformation to your company to become the the leaders in leveraging digital transformation, or you as a new person entering into a company that's been assigned project, you certainly want to make sure that you have been set up for success, because data science cannot happen without data. But even if you are done with the data science portion, which we love to do, how is that going to impact the end user is going to truly help you be successful in long run, because you will understand that when I am done, how does it help the users, the end users, whether it's customers, mechanics, salespeople, whoever it is, be able to change or influence the decisions they are making or a process that they are following in planning. So truly your labor productivity improves, your uptime on those equipments being maintained is improved, and profitability is available. So here's an example at a corporate level. I'm also going to talk about it from a non-profit level itself. I mean, again, a lot of us have been in the supply chain area, or at least understand at a high level that what is the cost improvement that we can do in truly managing the inventory well, understanding the demand and positioning. So here's another value story, which was for a nonprofit company, which was trying to improve and serve and get the food in the hands of the maximum number of people. They only get so much donation, and they wanted to ensure that that donation truly is used in trying to provide as many people with the food that they can. Now, their value levels are, they wanted to build a technology that helped them manage their inventory and the supply chain costs. For a lot of geeks that are going to be amongst us over here, this is a classical supply chain problem. You understand what is it required to reduce the waste, to reduce inventory costs, to think about understanding how do you use the shipping cost to aggregate your demands so that you can truly improve the cycle time of deliveries, the cost of deliveries, and what's going to be the return for the organization? Because you're going to be more efficient in it, your cost per pound of food deliveries is going to improve. The time it takes to deliver would improve. Your food waste will go down and you will be more sustainable with better. Now, this is what I call as value story mapping. And this is a tool that, a lot of us might not have learned in graduate school, but it's a huge value add as we think about before we start spending quarters and years in solving a problem, of truly stepping back and saying, why are we doing it? And once we are successful, how is it going to help the organization, whether it's for profit, non-profit, or the end user, whoever we are trying to support in their, you know, decision making or bring value to them. I mean, that's what we are all about, the science of doing better. So, you know, your role as you join organizations is going to be make sure your functional executives or the functional sales and field leaders are the heroes in your value story. So they do not care. Let me step back. They do care, but they are not going to articulate around, I want a data science model. A salesperson is going to think about, can you help me understand which customers are thinking about leaving the organization? A field person will want to understand the profitability on their contracts, will want to understand which mechanics are doing better, which branches, regions are doing better than the other, and how do they use those insights to drive improvement in the organization. Whether you use a predictive data science model, an optimization model, or just give them visibility of what is happening, and it's a descriptive model, it's not of importance to them. What's important for them is you've given them an actionable piece of information or insight that they can use to change their team's actions and hence drive value for the organization. So here's my recommendation to you guys. As you enter into organizations and you think about any project that you are getting into, certainly if you are getting into just a project and you do not have to worry about there are 15 projects under me, which one is important, I think at least go through the value equation mapping process to truly understand and figure out what it is that you should be solving. Then, if you are in a position where you have a lot of demand in the organizations, but you do not know which one to focus on, there are ways for you to then think about, what are your strategic business objectives? How are your projects tying into strategic business objectives? And certainly use those criterion to help you select which models or which projects to work on. Okay. Now, as you look into the projects itself, and I talked about when you go into a company, they will have their own strategic objectives and their goals at an annual level, quarterly level of improving customer experience, growth, sustainability. Your goal, even though you are just going to be working on the analytics or machine learning side, is to also think about the lens itself, because it doesn't just take data science. It takes a lot more than data science for things to be put into production. How do you enable the enterprise into, once you are done with the solution, to make a difference and adopt those insights itself? If their data is not good, so if you are working on what I called as the 15% versus the 100%, and there's another example I can give you. work for a company that was leveraging IoT to help improving their insights on what to fix in that equipment, and realized the sensors that they were using were not able to sense some of the big defects that can be used to identify what is happening. So guess what? It's junk in, junk out. So I had teams in both of my past organizations that were focused on not just building models, but helping the organization with the engineering organization improve the sensing capabilities itself so that those models can then help improve the predictions itself. So, my teams in BNSF were trying to detect how, wheels are wearing over time. Can we detect cracked wheels? Well, guess what? We needed to understand the heat signature. We needed to understand the video signature. How do you install a high definition camera on a train that's running at 70 miles an hour? That was equally important before you could build models on image analytics that were leveraging that information coming and the video coming to build the insights. And then how do you use those insights to get into the hands of the people that are planners to say, hey, your train ABC is going through this region and the 10th car seems to have a cracked wheel. Huge implications. But as you can see, in order for the teams to make sure that solution happened, we spent a lot of time first figuring out that the sensors we are using to detect heat have a lot more latency than what we can afford to really detect a cracked wheel at that instant. So my teams were even involved in building the right high definition camera to be chosen, then helping mount it with the engineering teams and using that streaming video to analyze what's, where is a cracked wheel and help them do it. Now, they were doing it 8, 9 years ago when image analytics, looking at streaming videos was still in its infancy. So the point I'm trying to make is a lot of innovation happens in practice. And while there is some very groundbreaking innovation that the practitioners rely sometimes on the academic institutions to provide, and I'll give you an example of that too, but there is an innovation and disruption of saying, okay, I'm being asked to predict something and I don't even have the signal to be able to figure that out. If that sensor is not even be able to, is not mounted on the right place to be able to detect the crack or mounted in the right place to understand the vibration of an elevator, then you're not going to be able to detect that there is an issue with it. So there are different skills, not just the data management skills, but skills of folks that understand how to build and detect those, leverage the sensing equipment out there in the industry before you can do things itself. So here's my perspective. Any problem you're trying to solve, do not just go down and think about what is available as data, but understand that quality of the data, understand what more can you bring in to help improve your predictions or your solutions to help out there too. And that gives you the gaps and deficits. It also gives you an understanding of a roadmap of how you're going to help them scale. So I'm going to give you, another point of map itself. So to keep things, you know, in focus for a company, they don't want to wait years to make a difference. They want to start having a difference with the agile framework itself. So think about an incremental solution. So even though you might be trying to predict which equipment is healthy or unhealthy, if the mechanics get just the visibility of understanding where are we spending most of our time and how did other mechanics fix it, that first level going from no data to just an availability of data itself could be a huge value add for the organization. But then you can take them in that experience to start anticipating what do they need. So giving you another example out there, a mechanic that is going to visit 10 equipment that day, if you can help them understand, and that's where I'm going to the anticipation and ecosystem. So you have awareness of understanding what all they are going to fix today. You're going to then help prioritize and say, okay, which equipment should you go focus on first? I mean, there's certainly a routing aspect to it because you don't want them to be driving crisscross across a big city, because there's a drive time and unproductive time. But they also could be another element, which is, are certain elevators or are certain equipments requiring more maintenance, and how do you get the mechanic to focus on them earlier in the week than later in the week, because you could perhaps prevent a shutdown. That's the anticipation. This is the digital experience where you are trying to empower your internal employees to really serve your customers. So remember what I was talking about, the business stakeholders need to become the heroes in your stories. They are making decisions that drive the profitability of the company. How do you make them have smarter insights at their fingertips so that you can influence their decisions as well as processes to make it happen? A project that is going through cost overrun, just that visibility can help a planner understand, okay, I need to understand now how much work is left and how am I going to finish it and what will be the profitability on the project itself. So again, all things you might think that are not important to you, but truly, in order for us to truly get into the trillions of dollars of impact that I talked beginning of the presentation, you really don't need to be just thinking about the right side, that do I need descriptive tools, predictive tools, prescriptive tools, but you also need to be thinking about where are your end customers now, what decisions they are making now, and how do I truly influence them with the project I'm working itself. And by the way, the descriptive, predictive, prescriptive type was more in the structured data. At least the predictive and prescriptive was more in the structured data domain. Only 20% of organizational information is structured. 80% is unstructured. So LLMs and the whole conversation and buzz about how AI is going to make difference in the last year is because we are starting to enter into that unstructured information space, and it opens truly a huge value enabler in our models becoming better in order for us to support the customers itself. So, time permitting, later on, I can talk about how some of the prescriptive models and predictive models that my teams were building, LLMs and some models based on that truly enable the value they could drive in the organization itself. Okay. Quickly, now, next couple of slides, I'm going to quickly talk about, I know the right side of this talent, the focus is more on, just giving you a little bit of awareness itself, because sometimes the companies we are joining Our startups do not have ecosystems, do not have architecture delivery teams flushed out, but having the awareness that that is something required itself is also good enough. And some of you that are at that roles hopefully already understand it. Now, for organizations that are truly the leaders in leveraging data and analytics, believe me, the right side is a huge value. That differentiates the leaders to the laggards. The impact that you can get if you are focusing on your talent and your operating model of operationalizing those insights is far more than you can get just focusing on insights, because that operationalizing it and making sure the people that truly can build that kind of models and understand your business, if you do not help career grow them and plan for recognition, they're not going to stay. So true digital leaders and companies that understand that focus on talent and operating model just as much, if not more, on the technology and the data and adoption and scaling. And by the way, it doesn't need to be the same level of maturity, digital maturity across the organization. You can have silos, you can have teams that are embedded, focused on customers. There can be having teams focused on sales. You can have teams focused on field. But that's a very traditional siloed approach into making an impact with data analytics. I mean, from there, you could go to some portion being centralized and, still developing it in the cloud so you can share things across, or go to all the way across into a native environment where your ecosystem allows your organization to have a pool set of resources that leverages what's existing, sort of like in the open source community, and build on top of it, but yet be able to support the organization because you understood the sales world and you understood the field world. So, just another glimpse to let you know a lot of organizations are structured differently. No right or wrong. There is definitely pros and cons in each one of them. And the organizations I've led and I've set up, I have set these up at a different varying level, sometimes between different functions itself. So what's in it for you that I want you to really walk? So I know when we go to graduate school, it's all about you defending the work, and there is a huge lot of emphasis on individual work itself, but there is no I in teams. When I talked about the value that analytics or projects can bring in practitioner world, you will see fusion teams that are bringing in skills around data engineering, data science, business stakeholders that are focused on the end-to-end customer solution at one level itself. There are skills around agile, DevOps, data ops, ML ops that helps you make sure that you keep bringing in incremental value and you're not taking quarters and years to drive impact to the organization. And it certainly helps with also truly understanding sometimes our understanding of the problem is not right. So there's, inherent risk in taking multi-year projects and ending up building something that doesn't drive value. So the way you'll see operate in organizations, the ones I talked about in leaders, you will become part of big teams, not just part of the data science team, but teams that are focused around a product to make a difference itself, which will include the SMEs, the functional leaders I talked about. Engagement model is extremely important, not just how you develop, but how you operationalize. So, giving you an example over here, when I joined one of my companies, you had them separated, they were data science, business analysts spread over 100 countries that were, focused on developing their own solutions because the data was in different structure in each of the countries. But by building an ecosystem that allowed those data analysts to come together and focus on leveraging what another country had done and use that to build something more, sort of like, the um, open source architecture to allow you, gave the company the agility yet the freedom it needed to enable the 100 countries to start speaking the same voice and speaking the same tools itself. So it's very important to understand that aspect of the organization as well, because otherwise you're competing with the likes of you, a data scientist in another country, still working for the same company itself. So how do you make them come together to create that win-win? Certainly, data science itself is not going to solve the problem. I mean, you need to understand the business. You need to understand the problem you're trying to solve and build those stakeholder relationships so you can ensure you're solving the right problem itself. Okay? So quick recap out there. What I started out for you was always focus on the why. Why are you solving that problem itself? So remember that I said that one of the companies I consulted with itself, even if they were going to be successful solving that data science problem, they couldn't even reach 15% of their portfolio. So that team had spent over a year working on a problem, feeling bad about not being able to do a great job, only to realize that even if they were perfect, it won't scale. Later on, they also realized that the data itself didn't have signal itself. So if they had spent enough time in that value mapping to understand what's happening itself, they would not have spent a lot of time just second guessing, but even thinking about, do I need to bring in more sensors in the mix to help me focus on truly being able to predict those machine failures? We are not all unicorns. I mean, I certainly hope all of us, it's truly, honestly, a lot of technologies are making it extremely easy for us to now engineer data in the cloud, to manage data in the cloud, and you require lesser and lesser experience because there's a lot of companies and tools available. But regardless, you still need a different composition and role brought in. Now, part of setups, they might be lean and you'll need to play multiple hats, but you need to understand that before you do the science part, you need to think about the data part, and there's a cost to the compute and how are you going to compute and how you're going to deploy. So understanding the roles you are filling in will help you understand how do you scale and create the impact itself. I talked a little bit about the operating model itself. You need to think about, once it is deployed and there are different companies or countries that you're supporting, how are the others going to be part of that solution to help you out scaling itself? So operating model, very important. You can build something, but to scale and to include the other citizen data scientists to leverage what's built and not keep having competitive solutions and a competition created internally itself, it's something important. Technology, I mean, again, some of my best data scientists itself were always disrupting themselves. I mean, they were second, questioning itself on how they extracted data, how they built models, how they use ML ops, how they use data ops. They were questioning. I told you about, how one of our projects was about trying to build models that helped billions of dollars of planning in trying to optimize where we maintain. While we realized that in order for us to truly understand and predict where maintenance needs to happen, optimize the maintenance, we needed to predict where we need maintenance. Guess what? Some of that prediction required us to have access to information that was never digitized. I mean, the track charts were not there for us to leverage. So the 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 data scientists in my team actually built image analytics models using data science to actually predict, okay, where is the track rough? Do I need to now focus on that roughness as an indicator itself to now be able to predict where maintenance can happen? So that disruption in technology and being able to bring those capabilities itself also allowed us to truly create value, because that optimization model was great in optimizing where to maintain. I mean, not where to maintain, but how to maintain. But if you did not understand where to maintain, then how are you going to optimize your assets? And last but not least, I mean, I know you are there in the PhDs and postdocs to learn, but remember, I mean, our world is changing really fast. So continue to learn out there. Not just technical skills, but business skills, and kind of focus on trying to continue to leverage professional organizations such as Informs to find peers and question and figure out, are others doing it better? I mean, we did it as literature survey for doing during a PhD, but that process should not stop. You should always try to continue to learn and improve and try to see, are there ways that we can be doing things better? So with that, Dolores, I'm going to take any questions that are out there.
Thank you so much. It has been a very, very insightful presentation for people who want to basically take all that we learn in academia to industry, and actually the other way around. Are there any questions from the audience?
So I think Mikal is saying, what if the business strategy is for data analytics solution itself?
Yeah.
That's a wonderful, great question. I mean, I think the number of accelerators that we are building is on AI is truly, honestly, those are the fastest growing companies out there. So Mikal, I mean, at the end of the day, even if you are building a data analytics solution, it is supposed to bring in value to somebody, and that's why that company will be bought or somebody will be buying that solution. So I think in at the end of the day, there is always a user in mind, and when the user is mind is thought through, even if the data analytics is the biggest portion of the value add, you will realize how you display it, or how do they need it real time, or do they need it once a day. All that can be changed because you understood how the user is going to use it to make a difference. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question and the answer to the question. And it's great to see that actually your last bullet point is about continue to learn, right? Because you know it's such a fast-moving area that we do all need to learn from each other in both ways. So.
So I think Philippe has a question due. How do we best estimate the ROI of predictive and prescriptive projects using the KPIs and metrics that the project cares about? I think, again, another great question. Building a business case itself, honestly, Philippe, is a skill that you need to develop. I know sometimes part of PhDs, that's not a course or skill we build, but at the end of the day, whether it's a true precise business case or back of the envelope business case, you need to know what is in it for you, the price. Can you get 5% improvement, 10% improvement? That helps you understand how much time it will take to solve. So I'll give you an example itself. So when I joined the railroad a while back, people talk about AI as if it started now, but we've been doing it for decades. So one of the problem that we were trying to solve is how, what trains to run, what car should go on that train, And if you can imagine, for a railroad, I mean, BNSF Railroad was the largest freight railroad in the world, optimizing and coming up with the best train plan, you just did not have the computational capability at that time to be able to even solve that problem. And when I had joined that team, before I started leading it, there was just a couple of people. You couldn't solve the problem. So I set up academic alliances that helped us kind of focus their PhD researches on these big, tough nut problems to solve. What it gave us the capability was that we've realized, just for one problem itself, that if we had a tool that could optimize the way we switch traffic in the yards, and you completely did not worry about anything, and you could just rewrite everything, you could get, north of 20% improvement. Now, giving you an idea for a company like, BNSF, when you think about an airline, when you change, the way they operate, the number of gates they are serving, the places they are serving, it's their complete operating plan itself. When a company is spending billions of dollars in that kind of asset, imagine what 20% can do for you. It's huge. But again, understanding what were the cost drivers was very important, and then understanding that we didn't have the capability to solve it internally, and created partnerships to help us at least create estimates in the process. So we understood, okay, if we were to do it right, how much impact can we create? And it certainly influenced the investment we were willing to make after that. Does it help, Philippe?
Thank you, Philip, and thank you, Pooja, for the very thorough answer. Are there any more questions from the audience? So if not, we would like to thank you again for taking the time to come today to our online seminar series and giving this great presentation. And to the audience, please remember that we will be back on Monday next week at 4:30 with another talk. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure coming here.